If you'd like me to recap a specific manhwa, manhua, or webtoon, just drop its name in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next recap. Now, let's jump into the story.
The sound of a footstep, a distinct tack, echoed as Joo In-gong walked. My name is Joo In-gong. My parents named me that, hoping I'd become an important figure in the world. Joo In-gong means protagonist in Korean. He heard his name called out, huh? Joo In-gong, followed by another, here comes Joo In-gong. Joo In-gong recalled how he was constantly teased for his name ever since he was young. But he never really cared. After all, he always wanted to be the main character. He thought to himself, stop making fun of me. You have the game, right? His friend replied, hoo, I saved a copy for you. He was talking about Night Saga, the remake of Night Saga. It was a story about humans and demons. A grand castle stood against a fiery, alien sky, a stark and imposing landscape. It's a game where you choose between the human hero, Locke. A fierce orc warrior, clad in armor, stood ready for battle, his axe held high. And the demon king's eldest son, Zephyr Ragnaros. You go on adventures around the world, completing missions. I've beaten the game more than 10 times since I was young. So I know everything there is to know about it. Plus, this game is the first to be released after VR. With a sudden burst of energy, the VR pod activated. He was ready. The game began with a rush of sound and light. He planned to take it easy today and only play for 8 hours. He felt a strange sensation, a disorienting shift. The world around him dissolved into a blur of light. The title screen displayed breakers, marking the beginning of Chapter 1. He found himself blinking, confused. Huh? Am I in the game? He thought, it's not a real beginning if I don't wake up in a bed. But... He looked down at himself, bewildered. Who is this character? Suddenly, a booming, gruff voice bellows from behind a curtain, startling Joo In-gong. An imposing orc emerges, demanding to know why everyone isn't ready for the day's business. Joo In-gong can only react with a sharp gasp, his mind reeling at the incredible realism of his surroundings. This level of detail was beyond anything he'd expected. He lets out a confused huh, his voice barely a whisper as he grapples with the reality of the situation. He can interact so naturally with the world. He wonders aloud if he's really able to converse with the game's characters. This level of immersion certainly wasn't advertised, leaving him baffled. The orc, introducing himself impatiently as Karak, demands to know Joo In-gong's name, sounding surprised that he might have forgotten it. Joo In-gong simply repeats the name, Karak? Karak, clearly not in the mood for hesitation, tells Joo In-gong that everyone is waiting, urging him to hurry along as Prince Shutra. A moment of stunned silence follows. Joo In-gong is bewildered, realizing Karak is referring to him as Shutra Ignas, the Demon King's 9th son. He protests, recalling he never even chose to play as this character. Desperate for answers, he attempts to access the game's interface, hoping to understand what's happening. He reaches out, initiating the command. The status window appears, confirming his character is indeed Shutra Ignas, level 1. He questions if he's actually meant to play as this prince, especially upon seeing his incredibly low stats. Examining the stats, Joo In-gong notes with disbelief that even a low-level NPC would have higher base stats than this prince. He's supposed to be royalty, yet he's weaker than a commoner. He then checks his skills and discovers 2 abilities, Conquest LV1 and Protagonist Setting Adjustment LV13. This sparks a new wave of curiosity within him. He wonders aloud if that Protagonist Setting Adjustment skill actually means what he thinks it does, a flicker of hope igniting in his mind. Karak calls out again, his impatience growing. Joo In-gong, still processing, is startled by a sudden shift, a subtle movement from behind the curtain, indicating an immediate response. He lets out another confused huh, the realization dawning that something is about to happen, and he's completely unprepared. The scene abruptly shifts, the environment changing to reveal a large group of orcs, their imposing figures filling the view. Joo In-gong, referencing his newly discovered skill, asks Karak about the tense atmosphere, feeling like they're on the brink of war. He senses the palpable tension. Karak dismisses his concerns brusquely, urging them to move and stating their objective, to eliminate the Scarlet Lightning bastards. Joo In-gong is shocked by Karak's aggressive statement, his eyes widening in disbelief at the directness and violence of the command. Karak excitedly declares it's their first battle and rushes forward, leaving Joo In-gong reeling from the unexpected turn of events and the utter lack of a tutorial. He's thrown into the chaos without warning. He takes a moment to process the immediate danger he's in, his mind racing with a mix of fear and a desperate need to survive. A looming red-skinned orc informs him that he needs to deal with an uprising from the Scarlet Lightning tribe's forces. Joo In-gong is further informed that he must resolve the situation with the 7th prince and 8th princess, adding another layer of confusion to his already overwhelming predicament. Karak expresses confusion, noting they were only supposed to bring 10 people and that he'd expected a simple patrol, not a full-scale engagement. Joo In-gong questions Karak's statement, wondering if the orc ate something wrong the previous day. Karak's behavior is so peculiar, making Joo In-gong doubt his own memory. Suddenly, a sharp, impactful sound effect punctuates the tense exchange, signaling a dramatic turn of events or the beginning of a confrontation. Joo In-gong found the minimap to be incredibly convenient and decided to keep it visible at all times. He noticed something unusual on the map, a hidden path, and wondered if it was part of some event. Karak, reading from a scroll, declared that the indicated route would take far too long. Karak then told Joo In-gong to follow him, as he knew a much faster way, causing Joo In-gong to pause in uncertainty. A group of orcs marched through a forest clearing. More orcs traversed rocky, mountainous terrain. Joo In-gong appeared anxious, his expression a close-up. They finally reached massive, ancient-looking doors nestled within a forest. Breathing heavily, Karak jokingly asked Joo In-gong how he'd found the place, even questioning if he was a mage. Joo In-gong dismissed the idea. Karak, still catching his breath, inquired if Joo In-gong was alright, noting his exhaustion. He mused about the unfitness of a level 1 character. As Joo In-gong reached for the large doors, he began to ask Karak to check if they would open. Suddenly, a bright flash and a loud impact signaled something significant. Joo In-gong looked shocked, exclaiming in confusion. A notification appeared, declaring, "You have leveled up." Joo In-gong stared in disbelief, exclaiming that he couldn't fathom leveling up simply from walking. The scene dissolved into a black void. He checked his status window, utterly amazed by the outcome. All his stats had increased by 2, and he had 2 extra skill points, declaring the situation was insane. Karak impatiently asked Joo In-gong what he was doing and urged him to hurry. Joo In-gong replied that he was coming, and while he wasn't sure what awaited them, he was relieved not to be alone. He had a thoughtful look on his face, considering something important. He remembered his protagonist setting adjustment LV1 skill, realizing it meant he possessed plot armor. They entered a dark, cavernous space. Karak speculated that dwarves must have dug this cave. Joo In-gong, surprised, asked if dwarves still existed, to which Karak replied that they used to. Joo In-gong wondered if they had all moved out of the demonic realm, admitting he only knew about it through hearsay. Karak exclaimed in surprise, spotting a treasure hoard, "Huh? We struck gold." He excitedly declared that the foolish dwarves must have left all their weapons behind. Karak, ever the enthusiastic companion, urged Joo In-gong to take all the spoils, even if they were heavy, his boisterous laugh echoing in the cavern. Joo In-gong examined the dwarven weapons, the game system informing him that his level, strength, and magic were insufficient to wield them. Despite the discouraging stats, Joo In-gong was determined to take them, wondering how he could store them in his inventory. He focused his will, thinking take and touching a weapon. With a satisfying thought, the weapon vanished into his inventory. He realized he just had to touch an item and think about taking it. Suddenly, the sounds of battle erupted outside the cave, and Joo In-gong found himself pulled from his inventory management, a confused "huh" escaping his lips. He burst out of the cave, seeing orcs being pushed back, and shouting for everyone to back off. A sudden, violent crack split the air as one of the orcs was struck down by an unseen force. Another orc was sent flying through the air, a victim of the unexpected attack. The ground shook with the impact as the orc landed with a thud. From the shadows, a formidable figure emerged, General Kaichan of the Scarlet Lightning tribe, who questioned if they truly believed their path wouldn't be discovered. Kaichan declared his intention to slaughter them all. Chaos ensued as the orcs clashed with the Scarlet Lightning tribe. The battle raged, a whirlwind of blades and roars. Joo In-gong found himself in the thick of it, desperately trying to survive. He saw an opportunity, thinking he should at least steal some kills to gain experience. With a desperate lunge, he engaged an enemy, aiming for a quick victory. He managed to land a blow, the sound of impact echoing. He dodged a retaliatory strike, his eyes wide with alarm. A guttural roar preceded a powerful blow that sent him reeling. He cried out as he was knocked off his feet, the world blurring around him. A warning flashed across his vision, HP January 15th. He was on the brink of death. Another attack came his way, and he braced for the inevitable. He was struck again, a sharp cry of pain escaping his lips as he fell to the ground. He felt the overwhelming weight of the enemy's attack, his body failing him. Joo In-gong's terror was palpable as the chaos of battle intensified around him. The massive orc, Karak, loomed over him, his voice filled with urgency as he shouted for him to move, still calling him prince. Joo In-gong could only stammer Karak's name, his own hands trembling uncontrollably as the sheer terror of the situation overwhelmed him. He tried to convince himself it was just a game, but the visceral reality of the battle shook that belief to its core. He whispered to himself that it was just a game, but the sheer terror of the situation was undeniable. Overcome, Joo In-gong desperately wished for it to end, fumbling for the menu to escape the terrifying reality. He was confronted with his own meager stats as the protagonist. His status window confirmed it, he owned no skills yet, leaving him utterly vulnerable in this brutal conflict. He frantically searched the interface, fumbling through the options for any way out of this nightmare. Panic seized him as he realized there was no option to end the game, sending a chill down his spine. Could he truly be trapped in here? The thought was a chilling confirmation of his worst fears. The sounds of battle grew closer, more intense, the guttural roars of the orcs echoing through the cave. He was surrounded by orcs, the fighting raging on around him in a whirlwind of steel and fury. Flashes of movement caught his eye, the glint of weapons in the dim light painting a grim picture of the ongoing carnage. A powerful surge of energy erupted nearby, forcing him to shield his eyes from the blinding light. The air crackled with raw power as a fearsome demon, General Kaichan, emerged from the fray, radiating an aura of dark magic. General Kaichan brought his weapon down with devastating force, and Joo In-gong felt a searing pain as he was caught in the attack, his vision blurring. He gasped for air, the last vestiges of his strength failing him as he was battered and broken by Kaichan's overwhelming power. He was on the brink of collapse, the sheer force of Kaichan's assault leaving him utterly spent. Gasping for breath, his body screamed in agony, the overwhelming power of the attack leaving him severely wounded. He was on the verge of death, his HP reduced to a perilous 1/15. With his last ounce of consciousness, Joo In-gong desperately cried out that he couldn't die here, not like this. Darkness. A suffocating, disorienting descent into an unknown void. He's adrift, lost in the black. He awakens in a surreal, ethereal space, bathed in a soft, otherworldly glow. Confusion etched onto his face, he can barely comprehend his surroundings. Disoriented, he questions where he is, the brutal assault by the orc still a vivid, horrifying memory. A chilling thought grips him, could this be death? A faint glimmer of light pierces the oppressive darkness, hinting at a presence he can't quite discern. A disembodied voice echoes, declaring him the fated one, the destined ruler of this strange realm. The voice lays bare his purpose, to conquer, to enslave, and ultimately, to rule. His eyes widen, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face as the impossible words sink in. This can't be real. He voices his stunned reaction, a single word of pure astonishment escaping his lips. Suddenly, a sharp, guttural cry pierces the silence, a sound of sheer panic. The chapter title appears, signaling a dramatic, unexpected turn of events. The ethereal realm abruptly gives way to a harsh, battle-scarred landscape. The air is thick with tension. A violent clash erupts, the sounds of battle filling the air with a terrifying ferocity. Orcs and goblins unleash their aggression, their war cries a symphony of chaos. He finds himself surrounded, the odds impossibly stacked against him. There's no escape. General Kaichan, with a sneer of pure arrogance, dismisses his opponents, ordering a swift and merciless end to them all. Kaichan scoffs, believing their small numbers make them foolish. He commands his forces to kill them all without hesitation. Suddenly, a surge of power courses through him, accompanied by a sharp impact. It feels like an awakening, something inexplicable. His attackers falter, stunned by his impossible survival and the strange, new aura that now surrounds him. A notification flashes before his eyes, telekinesis has been acquired. He questions how this is possible, his mind racing to comprehend the sudden acquisition of such a power he never learned. A sharp gasp escapes his lips as a new realization dawns, a sudden, profound understanding. His status screen displays, Prince, with a newly acquired subclass, Knight of Conquest. He ponders the meaning of this unexpected title. Kaichan, enraged by the turn of events, bellows for his minions to immediately kill the prince. A loyal ally, recognizing the sudden danger, shouts a desperate warning to protect the prince. A chorus of voices rises in unison, vowing to defend their prince at all costs, their loyalty unwavering. A sudden, violent impact reverberates through the battlefield as the prince unleashes his newfound power. Suddenly, a new subclass, Knight of Conquest, appeared for the prince, strangely at level 1. Confusion flickered across his face, this class wasn't supposed to be available. He wondered why this was happening. He felt a strange resonance, as if spells he'd never learned were already known, echoing in his mind. An ancient and powerful connection surged through him, a feeling of destiny awakening. With newfound authority, he declared that the power of conquest would be the power of a king. This proclamation was immediately followed by a surge of energy, as the skill under the king's banner activated, ready to empower his allies. The orcs, caught in the unexpected blast of power, let out confused cries as their strength began to surge beyond their control. They urged their comrades on, feeling an incredible, almost overwhelming power coursing through them, ready to decimate their foes. The battle intensified, his empowered allies beginning to overwhelm the stunned orcs. The orcs could only stare in shock at the sudden, impossible shift in power. The tide of battle was turning completely, the sheer disbelief palpable. A goblin commander, witnessing this impossible turn of events, could only exclaim that it was absurd. He could barely comprehend what he was seeing as his forces faltered. A look of dawning realization spread across a red-skinned warrior's face, a forgotten name or possibility stirring in his mind. Another warrior, enraged by the prince's sudden abilities, bellowed for him to stop this nonsense immediately, launching a furious counterattack. The prince, now imbued with this new power, found himself inundated with multiple level-up notifications, a testament to his rapid, inexplicable growth. Seeing the prince's surge of power, Karak challenged him to a spar, stating his intent to become the prince's leader and needing to gauge his swordsmanship firsthand. The prince readily agreed, and as they clashed, he felt a familiar surge of acquisition. His basic swordsmanship skills began to manifest, and he started to suspect that direct experience was the key to gaining these new abilities. The prince's allies, now filled with renewed vigor, pushed back against the surprised orcs. He watched his allies fight with a newfound ferocity, fueled by his power. The raw power of the orcs was beginning to falter against the coordinated assault. Karak, grinning, declared he was just getting started. He urged his comrade forward, "Go, Karak." As the sparring began, the prince felt the familiar surge of acquisition, his basic swordsmanship skills manifesting. One of the orcs, witnessing the impossible turn of events, could only stammer in disbelief, Wait a second. The sheer force of their renewed strength caused the orcs to cry out in panic as they realized they were being overwhelmed. The prince's allies were in full retreat, a sight that dumbfounded the remaining orc warriors. The overwhelming power of the Knight of Conquest class now fully unleashed, the prince watched as his allies, suddenly imbued with incredible strength, began to decimate the remaining orc forces. As the tide of battle shifted dramatically, one of the goblin commanders could only express sheer astonishment at their allies' sudden retreat, exclaiming, "Woa! They're running away." Amidst the chaos, a system notification announced that the merits of their fallen general were now for his king, a somber reminder of the ongoing conflict. Following the decisive victory, the prince was bombarded with multiple level-up notifications, indicating his rapid ascent. He looked on in shock as his own level continued to climb, questioning the unbelievable pace of his growth. Another orc, feeling an unknown surge of power within him, could only gasp at its intensity, questioning what exactly is this strength. The orc stared at his hands, marveling at the inexplicable strength coursing through him. A subtle sound indicated movement, as if something was being drawn or sliced through the air. One of the allies, a keen observer, pondered aloud if the prince was the source of their sudden, overwhelming power, wondering, could it be because of the prince? The prince began to consider the strangeness of his current situation, a growing unease settling in. Frantically searching his interface, he found that the logout button was completely gone from the menu. A wave of panic washed over him as he tried to regain his composure, the absence of the logout option deeply unsettling, his mind racing with the thought, there's no logout button in the menu. No, calm down. I need to calm down. He started to reason through the possibilities, his mind racing with theories. His first thought was that he might be trapped within the virtual reality. Two possibilities come to mind. First, is that I'm trapped inside this virtual reality. Maybe a critical bug happened in the real world. If that's the case, IT could be fixed once there's an update. The second possibility. Although it sounds insane. He paused, considering a second, far more unbelievable scenario. Is that this is reality, not a game. Just like in novels and comics, I've entered the world of the game. Or at the very least. He described this world as having a background that felt undeniably real. The non-player characters were capable of engaging in genuine conversation, adding to the realism. And perhaps most strikingly, there was no censorship to blur the harsh realities of this world. The chilling thought crossed his mind, what if this really is another world? Do I have to die here? He quickly dismissed the terrifying thought, reminding himself that he was fortunate not to be one of the monstrous orcs or ogres, exclaiming, no. I can't take that kind of risk. At least I'm not an orc or ogre. Karak called out, his voice laced with confusion. Prince? The prince, still processing his sudden surge of power and the unsettling realization about the logout button, was pulled from his thoughts by Karak's unusual request. He questioned why Karak was suddenly demanding a sparring match. Karak stated his intention to become the prince's leader, explaining that understanding the prince's swordsmanship level was crucial for their future preparations. The prince, however, seemed unsure if such a thing was truly necessary. The prince, gripping his sword, looked taken aback by Karak's intensity. Karak, with a playful smirk, assured the prince that he would hold back as much as he could. He then teased the prince, questioning if that was how he addressed royalty. The prince shot back, pointing out that it wasn't fitting to speak that way to royalty. With a determined glint in his eyes, the prince challenged Karak to fight seriously, the urgency palpable. The sharp sound of a sword being drawn echoed as Karak prepared to strike, the tension in the air thickening. Karak unleashed a flurry of aggressive swings, each one met with a surprised grunt from the prince as he parried them. The prince, dodging and weaving, struggled to keep pace with Karak's relentless onslaught. Suddenly, a forceful blow landed, sending the prince reeling back. He stumbled, caught completely off guard by the sheer power of the hit. Karak, checking on him, commented that the prince shouldn't be hitting with that much force so suddenly. As the prince sat there, stunned, a notification flashed before his eyes: Basic Swordsmanship LV1 has been acquired. It appeared twice, as if to ensure he understood. He stared blankly, unable to process what had just happened. The prince, still reeling, questioned if he had just acquired swordsmanship and when exactly it happened. The sheer disbelief was evident on his face. A sudden realization dawned on him. He remembered the equally abrupt acquisition of telekinesis. Come to think of it, he murmured, this is just like with telekinesis. His eyes widened with a terrifying new hypothesis. He wondered if skills were gained through direct physical experience. He decided to end the sparring match there, eager to explore this newfound understanding, but was cut off before he could finish his thought. Karak interrupted him, a grin spreading across his face. Who said it's over? He declared with a chilling finality, I'm just getting started. The prince lunges forward, a whirlwind of motion as he attacks. Their weapons collide with a blinding flash of energy, the force of the impact shaking the very ground. The orc, Karak, grunts, a bead of sweat trickling down his brow as he notices the change. He mutters to himself that the prince's movements are much better now. He questions how the prince could have improved so drastically, wondering if his skill truly got better so quickly. Another fierce exchange of blows rings out as their intense spar continues. With a confident smirk, the prince taunts Karak, asking if his performance isn't bad. Now curious, the orc asks Karak what level he is. Karak hesitates, then replies that he believes he was level 21 the last time he checked. The prince, unimpressed, states that he should catch up soon enough. A status window appears, detailing Shutrignas as a level 14 Gandharvan prince, noting that everyone in this world possesses levels. The system explains that individuals here can't check their levels instantly in a status window like Karak can, requiring them to use a level evaluation spell instead. Shutrignas' status window is displayed again, emphasizing the significant advantage of being able to see all stats and reinforce them with extra points. A moment of introspection. Karak thinks to himself that he can become stronger. Then, a resolute no cuts through his thoughts. He declares with fierce conviction that he can become stronger, and much faster than anyone else. The scene shifts to a dramatic title card, The Demon Arc of Night Saga. The narrative explains that this arc follows Zephyr's story and his ascent to becoming the Demon King by surpassing his siblings. It's revealed that while there are many episodes leading to the ending, one specific event is crucial. A chilling depiction of Zephyr and his kin looms, hinting at a grim future. This pivotal event, the text explains, occurs in year 517, when Zephyr will eliminate all his siblings to achieve his goal. Karak realizes with dread that the keyword all means he too is destined to die. With the current year being 512, he knows he has a few years, and his priority must be to prevent this fate. He muses that becoming stronger than Zephyr is the best course of action when suddenly, he's startled by the prince's arrival, who questions his presence. The prince, appearing concerned, asks if something has happened, stating he had been looking everywhere for Karak. He then asks Karak if he's forgotten about a meeting that day, urging him to hurry as everyone is waiting. Karak was left pondering the surprising improvement he'd witnessed, wondering how such rapid advancement was even possible. He then turned his attention inward, examining his own status window. The ability to see all his stats and reinforce them with points was a clear advantage. These thoughts ignited a fierce desire to become stronger, to surpass everyone else. Suddenly, he was addressed warmly by Chris Moonlight, the seventh prince, who insisted they were siblings and encouraged him to be comfortable. Caitlin Moonlight, the eighth princess, chimed in, noting it was their first meeting but echoing Chris's friendly tone. Chris suggested Karak simply use their names, and though a bit taken aback by their unusual politeness, Karak agreed. Karak recognized them, the children of Elaine Moonlight, the fourth queen and ruler of the lycanthropes. He remembered them being quite troublesome in the game. A chilling memory resurfaced. A year before the Great Massacre, Zephyr and the other children of the Demon King would kill Chris and Caitlin. This tragic fate, he recalled, was tied to a specific secret. Caitlin was a bastard daughter. Caitlin chided Chris for fighting without following their plan, asking why he didn't just patrol. Chris stammered that he hadn't expected enemies from that direction. Chris then turned his attention to Karak, asking to check him for any injuries. Caitlin added that as the weakest, he should have been more careful. Karak, bewildered by their concern, could only offer an apology. He couldn't comprehend why Caitlin was worried about him, or how the Demon King's children had become so close. Chris warned Karak he'd receive a real scolding if he did something dangerous again, to which Karak meekly agreed. Karak was utterly perplexed. Were these two actually kind? He pondered the lycanthropes and their aura abilities, speculating it might stem from their potent life force. He wondered if he could learn aura as easily as other skills, then asked if they could relight something for him. Chris looked confused, asking Karak what he meant. The scene suddenly shifted as the sound of thunderous impacts signaled the start of a massive, chaotic battle. Karak found himself bewildered by the violent scene, not recognizing the combatants or understanding their presence. He learned he had acquired Aura LV1 after being hit, and the energy surge he felt was indeed the ability to sense aura. Finally, Karak was informed that General BDAHL's main force had secured victory against the Lightning Tribe, sparking a new plan in him: recruit BDAHL before he joined Zephyr. Explosive impacts rip through the battlefield as a brutal clash of forces unfolds. The sounds of war intensify, punctuated by sharp, percussive blows. A creature lets out a guttural roar of pain amidst the chaos. A sharp sound pierces the din of battle. Another creature cries out in agony, its pain echoing through the fray. The battle rages on, filled with the shrieks of the fallen and the cacophony of combat. The very ground trembles with the immense force of the ongoing conflict. A guttural cry of fury emanates from the heart of the battle. A brutal command rings out: kill them all. Another voice bellows a promise of reward for the most savage victory: I will reward the one who gets the most kills. A massive impact signals a devastating blow, shaking the battlefield. A bewildered gasp escapes someone as they witness the brutal display. A confused HUH hangs in the air, questioning the unfolding scene. A voice begins to question a mysterious presence: you're from Dash. The surrounding area is suddenly bathed in a strange, ethereal light. A subtle movement is followed by a fearful question: WHWHO are you? A thought echoes, expressing confusion about the identities present: I don't recall these characters in Night Saga. A surprised sound of realization escapes, followed by another questioning sound. Sharp intakes of breath indicate shock and disbelief at the revelation. A soft exhale marks a moment of recovery, as the intense light begins to fade. A golden light emanates, suggesting a shift or awakening. A dazed thought forms: EH? Did I just? The thought solidifies, a wave of disbelief washing over: did I just dream? A startled orc looms close, gruffly asking, why up? Karak reacts with alarm: WHOA. Jolted by the orc's sudden appearance, Karak exclaims that he was scared, but the orc calmly observes, YA seem fine. An orc, gruff and impatient, questions why Karak would ask a princess to hit him, implying his whining is the reason for their current predicament. Startled by the orc's rough questioning, Karak can only respond with a bewildered huh? Suddenly, a status window appears, declaring Karak has obtained Aura LV1. He exclaims with pure joy, feeling this newfound power for the first time. The orc, clearly skeptical, asks if one can actually awaken their aura by being struck with it. Karak admits, with a slight hesitation, that it was somewhat the case. His mind racing, Karak realizes this might explain his previous surge of energy during the fight with the Lightning Tribe. He confirms this with an excited yeah, that was me, a dawning understanding in his eyes. An empty panel, marking a transition. Karak asks his companion if anything significant happened while he was unconscious. The reply is a simple but impactful, of course. The main force won. Karak expresses surprise, not having expected the main force to have secured a victory against the Lightning Tribe, as he believed it was his and the Moonlight siblings' mission alone. His companion dismisses his assumption, questioning the scale of the Lightning Tribe. Karak then asks who was leading the main force. The name General BDAHL is revealed. Karak is stunned, recognizing the general as one of the strongest individuals he knew from the game. He recalls fondly how he particularly liked BDAHL as a subordinate when he was playing as Zephyr, a hint of past game knowledge surfacing. Suddenly, Karak's eyes widen with a cunning realization. He understands that BDAHL is destined to become Zephyr's subordinate in year 515. He notes that BDAHL isn't Zephyr's subordinate yet, which means he has an opportunity to recruit him first. A determined smirk spreads across Karak's face as he asserts his intention to claim BDAHL for himself before Zephyr can. Karak confidently states that he knows everything there is to know about BDAHL, listing the rewards he enjoys and his various talents. He emphasizes that the most crucial aspect of winning BDAHL over is understanding what he truly values. Karak reveals the key to recruitment: defeating BDAHL in a duel. With this crucial piece of information, Karak believes he can secure BDAHL as his subordinate before Zephyr does, deciding it's well worth the effort as he still has plenty of time. Karak addresses BDAHL, a sense of impending challenge in his voice, preparing to initiate his plan. His resolve firm, Karak declares, "You're gonna be my subordinate." The chapter title explodes onto the screen, accompanied by a bewildered question that hints at the unfolding events. Back at Caitlyn's camp, Caitlyn is utterly stunned, exclaiming her disbelief at Shitra's incredible progress in aura expulsion, questioning how he could achieve so much in a single day. Shutra, with a confident smirk, explains that such rapid advancement was a given, as he dedicated all his skill points to aura. He elaborates that this wasn't a rash decision either, emphasizing that aura significantly enhances one's physical capabilities across the board. Shutra boldly declares that aura is, in fact, superior to having telekinesis. Caitlin, still processing this impossible feat, wonders if his Gandharv heritage might be the reason for such an incredible surge in power. Shutra then asks Caitlin if he can create an underground map, but then quickly clarifies he meant an underground map. Shutra replies that while he doesn't have a proper map, he does possess a mini-map. He then requests a pen and paper, his intent to use this information becoming clear. Shutra eagerly awaits the writing materials, needing something to sketch on. Upon seeing the mini-map, Shutra is astounded, exclaiming that it's far more detailed than the map he possesses and calls Shutra a genius. Shutra muses that since the Scarlet Lightning tribe members they encountered are all gone, the current enemies won't be aware that they know about the underground tunnels. He realizes they can use this knowledge to their advantage and ambush their foes. He then asks Shutra if there's something else he needs him to do. Shutra looks at him, a silent question in his eyes, pondering the request. A shift in scenery occurs, hinting at a new character's arrival. A figure in a robe appears, lamenting that their mission is to patrol again, feeling they have no choice as the youngest sibling in their current situation. Someone replies that it's fortunate they have reinforcements, attributing it to their hard work, and another chimes in agreement. Shutra, hearing a sound, turns around with a surprised huh? Shutra recognizes the figure and questions their disguise, calling them sis. The figure, Syra, shushes him, explaining she's following in secret in case something happens. Syra continues, stating she'll only intervene if things become truly dangerous, as the accomplishment needs to be Shutra's own. Shutra reacts internally, questioning if she's being foolish to support him this way and if this is truly meant to be his accomplishment. He wonders if she's being stupid. Syra introduces herself formally as the adjutant to another figure, who nervously replies with a greeting. Syra reassures them they'll keep up and not to worry about them, to which the other figure agrees with an alright. The scene shifts to a vast, mountainous landscape bathed in sunlight. As they move through the caves, Shutra questions why all the caverns are empty, a sense of unease settling in. Shutra found it odd that no one had taken the valuables left behind, assuming the dwarves had cleared everything out. He then wondered about the weapons they'd found earlier, musing that perhaps they weren't deemed valuable enough to be taken, a thought he dismissed with a shrug. Suddenly, an unsettling sound, faint at first, began to echo through the tunnels, growing steadily closer. The prince and his orc companions noticed the approaching presence, their alertness spiking as they confirmed a threat was indeed near. The prince immediately recognized the sound, a grim certainty settling in that this had to be their quarry. Shutra's hand moved instinctively to his inventory, the familiar game interface materializing before him. He recalled preparing a flash spell item, just in case a situation like this were to arise. Shutra instructed his allies to close their eyes the moment he gave the signal, a slight hesitation coloring his voice as he asked if they understood. The cave ahead seemed to pulse with an ominous energy, and the sound of scuttling grew alarmingly louder. Emerging from the suffocating darkness, the stone spiders revealed themselves, their countless eyes glowing with a predatory luminescence. A sharp, sudden noise cut through the oppressive silence as the first wave of spiders lunged forward. The narration explained that stone spiders often appeared in groups of dozens and possessed a potent paralytic poison. Shutra's command cut through the growing cacophony, now. Close your eyes. The flash spell item was instantly activated, its contents erupting outwards in a blinding, disorienting flash. The cavern was consumed by the searing light, leaving the creatures disoriented and overwhelmed. The stone spiders shrieked, their multiple eyes blinking rapidly as they struggled to adjust to the sudden, intense brilliance. The creatures cried out in pain and confusion, their natural, dark habitat brutally violated. Shutra's voice boomed with newfound clarity, explaining the spider's fundamental weakness to light and rallying his allies to strike. The orcs, fueled by a bloodthirsty eagerness for battle, let out a mighty, unified war cry, charging forward. The sounds of fierce battle erupted as the orcs, emboldened by the disoriented spiders, engaged them with full force. Claws met chitinous exoskeletons, sparks flying as the brutal combat began in earnest. The chaotic melee raged on, the orcs fighting with desperate ferocity against the swarming horde. Shutra reminded everyone that stone spiders always hunted in groups, a crucial piece of information. He then declared that groups invariably have a leader, and called for Karak to follow him to confront the formidable boss. Karak readily agreed, drawing his sword with a determined glint in his eye, prepared to face the formidable foe head-on. Suddenly, the darkness of the tunnels erupted with the chitinous forms of stone spiders, their many eyes glinting ominously. Shutra and his orc allies scrambled, the spiders swarming towards them with unnerving speed. One monstrous spider lunged, its fanged maw opening wide with a guttural roar that shook the cavern. Karak bravely swung his axe, but the blow was met with a sickening thud, bouncing harmlessly off the spider's incredibly tough exterior. Shutra, ever observant, recognized the futility of their physical attacks against such formidable defenses. The orc allies pressed their assault, their weapons scraping ineffectually against the spider's carapace. Karak stared in disbelief as his mighty axe failed to even scratch the creature, the impact echoing his frustration. He exclaimed his shock at the unyielding nature of the spider's exoskeleton. Shutra, recalling a vital piece of information, reminded Karak of the creature's true weakness, a detail they had overlooked. He stated that their vulnerability was to fire, but confessed his own inability to wield such magic yet. From the depths of the cave, a deep, unsettling rumble hinted at the approach of something even more formidable. The spiders shifted, their numerous eyes fixing on the group with renewed, predatory aggression. A low growl emanated from the lead spider, its intentions clear. Suddenly, Syra's urgent voice cut through the chaos, instructing Karak to use fire, and then turned to Shutra, demanding he raise his sword. As if a divine signal, Syra unleashed her magic, a torrent of fiery energy engulfing Shutra's blade. Shutra could only stare in utter disbelief as his sword transformed into a blazing inferno, a testament to his sister's power. He exclaimed, questioning if this magically enhanced weapon was truly capable of defeating their monstrous foe. Syra, now revealed and ready, met his gaze with unwavering determination. The air crackled with an intense heat as the burning blade took its fearsome shape. A wave of pure, unadulterated power emanated from the ignited sword. Shutra's eyes widened, the transformation of his weapon signaling the turning point of the battle. With a mighty, guttural cry, Shutra unleashed the full might of the burning blade upon the lead stone spider boss. The impact shattered the very cavern floor beneath them, sending debris flying in a violent explosion. Flames erupted, engulfing the monstrous creature as its once impenetrable exoskeleton began to crack and warp under the inferno's wrath. Shutra pressed his advantage, the burning blade a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness, ready to deliver the final blow. And so, with Syra's magic, Shutra's blade transformed into the ultimate weapon, the burning blade. Fueled by this newfound power, Shutra unleashed a torrent of flame upon the lead stone spider. The raw energy surged, cracking its reinforced shell and engulfing it in searing heat, a critical blow in the desperate fight. Shutra, now wielding the burning blade with newfound ferocity, was ready to finish what he started, the fiery aura of his weapon radiating pure, destructive power. A blinding flash of golden light erupts around Shutra, a clear sign of his rapid advancement. The energy surges, engulfing Shutra in brilliance as he resonates with newfound strength. Even the cavern walls seem to pulse with power. The intense energy continues to manifest around Shutra, a tangible sign of his growth. A familiar notification flashes, ding. You have labeled up. Shutra's stats update, revealing he has indeed leveled up, now level 9 and a prince with formidable new capabilities. Shutra marvels at his new level, exclaiming, "Oh, level 9, as Syra, concerned, asks about the unusual light that accompanied his advancement. Shutra calmly reassures Syra, explaining that the light was merely a blessing, nothing to worry about. Syra inquires if it was indeed a blessing from Gandharv, to which Shutra confirms with a nod. Observing his remarkably skillful combat responses, Syra asks if he had faced such creatures before. With a mischievous smile, Shutra claims his knowledge comes from books and extensive game experience. Suddenly, one of the orc allies points out something unusual ahead, drawing Shutra's attention. Before them stands a mysterious structure resembling a grand door, embedded in the cavern wall. The chapter title appears, Breakers Chapter 5. A faint, grinding sound echoes from the imposing structure. The intricately designed door looms before them. Shutra, recognizing the design, exclaims, "Huh? This is a town portal?" The cavern echoes with their hushed reactions. An orc ally, intrigued, asks if Shutra knows what it is. Shutra admits he isn't entirely sure but has a strong hunch. He notes that the portal's pattern is distinctly dwarven, a style he recalled from his days playing as a hero character, though he never encountered one as Zephyr. Shutra recalls having only seen such portals a few times when playing as a hero. Shutra hypothesizes that injecting mana into the structure will activate it. Syra confirms his suspicion, agreeing that it indeed looks like a portal. Caitlin wonders if they can discover its destination, suggesting they look for inscriptions nearby. An orc ally finds carved letters on the wall, pointing them out to Shutra. Syra observes that the script is clearly not the common demon language. The carved letters are clearly dwarven, and the orc asks if Shutra can read them, which he surprisingly can. When asked if he knew dwarven script, Shadera scoffed, questioning why he would, and then turned to Syra with the same question. Syra apologetically admitted she couldn't read it either, but her gaze landed on some markings that read Gishka Mountains, portal number 2. Shadera noticed the inscription continued, stating that it was connected to portal number 3. A look of bewilderment crossed Shatara's face as he suddenly found himself able to read the dwarven script. A notification chimed, informing him that he had acquired the Dwarven Language LV11 skill. Shadera expressed his surprise, realizing that he could learn languages in this way too. The orc ally asked if he could really read it, to which Shadera, with a confident grin, replied that he thought so. Syra and Caitlin looked at Shadera in disbelief, asking since when he could read Dwarven and what the inscription below said. Shadera explained that he believed it said the portal would activate if mana was infused, and asked Chris to inject some. Shadera questioned why Chris couldn't just do it himself, but Chris deflected, claiming he was still clumsy with mana. Chris then revealed he couldn't use mana at all, so Shadera reluctantly agreed to proceed. With a sigh, Shadera stepped forward to inject the mana. As Shadera channeled his mana, the portal began to hum with energy. The energy swirled, building within the crystal embedded in the portal. The power pulsed, filling the chamber with an ethereal blue light as a map materialized, showing their current location in the Gishka Mountains, near portal number 3. Shadera realized this meant there were dwarven tunnels nearby. The orc ally noted this was advantageous, as the main forces of the Scarlet Lightning tribe were stationed in front of those mountains. Shadera agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to strike them from behind. Chris decided they should stop for the day to discuss the findings with his brother, to which Shadera readily agreed. The scene then shifts to the Scarlet Lightning tribe encampment, where an envoy reports an unexpected arrival. Chris, delighted by the discovery of the portal, exclaimed to Shadera that he was truly a blessing. Shadera, flustered, tried to downplay his role, muttering that he just, as the orc ally clapped him on the back. Chris insisted that Shadera name anything he desired, promising to grant it if it was within his power. Shadera initially declined, but Chris pressed, saying his feelings would be hurt if he didn't accept a reward. Shadera, hesitant, asked if it was okay even if his request was a bit unreasonable. Chris, his curiosity piqued, urged Shadera to speak, eager to know what the unreasonable request could be. Having learned of the portal's significance, Shadera boldly asked Chris if he would teach him the beast god fist art. Chris, utterly surprised by the request, could only manage a bewildered, "What?" Shadera quickly explained that while his current level meant he couldn't effectively wield weapons, martial techniques were a different matter entirely. He elaborated that the beast god fist art was a powerful S-rank martial art, passed down through the lycanthrope royal family, a lineage he clearly held in high regard. Acknowledging the audacity of his request, Shadera expressed his understanding if Chris were to refuse, even admitting he had anticipated it might not be possible. After a moment of quiet consideration, Chris finally agreed to teach him. He immediately added a crucial clarification: he could not teach the secret techniques of the art. But, to Shutara's elation, Chris then revealed he could at least teach him the aura. Chris asked if this was a sufficient gift, and Shadera, thrilled, enthusiastically assured him it was more than perfect. Chris, feeling a genuine connection forming, proposed that from this point forward, he could think of Shadera as his brother. Shadera was momentarily taken aback by the term, contemplating the idea. He found the concept of brotherhood to be quite meaningful. With a warm smile, Shadera accepted the proposal, stating he didn't dislike the idea and rather liked it. They shook hands, a symbol of their new bond, with Chris giving a hearty, "Yeah." Chris extended the sentiment further, suggesting they work together from now on. A system notification confirmed the establishment of an alliance between Shadera and the Moonlight siblings, starting as a normal alliance. The scene then shifted dramatically to the Scarlet Lightning tribe encampment, a vast collection of tents set against a rugged mountain landscape. The focus narrowed to a group of orc-like figures, one of whom remarked on the strategic implications of their arrival, suggesting they were targeted from the start. Another figure ominously mentioned our princess. The narrative revealed the identity of their leader, the 6th Princess Felicia Doomblade, kneeling amidst a ritualistic circle, as she pondered the reason for this unexpected presence. Felicia Doomblade, the leader of the Scarlet Lightning tribe, questioned the intentions of their unexpected visitors. The Scarlet Lightning tribe encampment was a bustling sight, filled with orc warriors whose skin was a deep crimson. They discussed the situation, implying their enemy might have had ulterior motives for coming to their location. A foreboding atmosphere settled as they referred to our princess. Princess Felicia Doomblade, a figure of dark authority, was shown questioning the reason for their arrival. Shutra reviews his stats, a familiar ritual, but he finds himself fixated on his charisma stat, noticing its growth has slowed compared to his other attributes. He muses that it only went up by 1 point last level up, a change from the earlier, more consistent gains. He remembers that in the original Night Saga, appearance and charisma were distinct stats. Appearance was purely about physical attractiveness, while charisma represented how likable a character was to others. Shutra finds this explanation logical, especially given his generally good growth so far. But more importantly, he's on the cusp of level 10. He recalls that in the original Night Saga, when characters like Zephyr and Locke reached level 10, their unique skills, such as Descendant of Darkness and The Chosen One, would also level up. Shutra hopes for similar luck, believing at least one of his own skills will improve. He's presented with his character sheet, confirming his current status, level 9, Gandharv species, a prince, and a protagonist with the Knight of Conquest subclass. He's more than ready for the next level. He sees the stats of Zephyr and Locke, recalling how their unique skills, Descendant of Darkness and the Chosen One, would level up when they hit level 10. He's reminded that their unique skills, Descendant of Darkness and the Chosen One, would level up when they hit level 10. Shutra expresses his hope that if he also reaches level 10, at least one of his skills will rise. Suddenly, a voice calls out, "Prince." An attendant informs him that everything is ready for their departure. Shutra, outwardly calm, displays a subtle hint of cheerfulness, dismissing any suggestion of good news with a simple, "No, not really." When asked if something good happened, Shutra simply replies that it's nothing significant, his smile betraying his words as an attendant emerges from behind a curtain. The sound of footsteps signals their departure, the orc attendant and Shutra beginning their journey. The journey has begun, filled with the sounds of their progress, heading towards an unknown destination. Shutra, with a determined look, declares it's time to move, ready to face whatever lies ahead. The scenery shifts to reveal imposing mountain peaks, hinting at the Gishka Mountains. The group makes their way through a rugged, mountainous terrain. Sudden, sharp impact sounds punctuate the air, hinting at an immediate engagement or a sudden obstacle. The sounds of a fierce struggle fill the air, indicating a flurry of blows and rapid movement. Amidst the chaos, the sounds of combat continue, suggesting an intense and immediate conflict. Shutra confirms that the portal is operational and connected to the Eska River in the Gishka Mountains, a testament to its reliable dwarven craftsmanship. The portal, a magnificent structure, stands ready to transport them to their destination. Shutra receives confirmation that the portal is functioning perfectly, a reliable piece of dwarven engineering. With the portal confirmed to be operational, the group is given the go-ahead to move through. A mystical energy emanates from the portal as the group prepares to enter, the air thick with anticipation. The group begins their passage through the portal, a surge of light and energy signaling their transition. Shutra lets out a sound of surprise, clearly not having expected the sight that greeted them upon arrival. They've materialized right in front of an enemy encampment. Shutra could barely believe his eyes, gazing at the shimmering portal that had once only existed in legends. "I can't believe I'm seeing a gate in real life." Someone's voice cut through Shutra's wonder, urging him forward. "What are you waiting for?" Snapping back to reality, Shutra quickly nodded, his focus now entirely on the immediate task. "Oh. Right. I'm coming." With a determined look, Shutra stepped towards the otherworldly energy radiating from the portal. The sounds of their departure echoed as they moved towards the shimmering gate. Their movement seemed to be muffled by the strange energies as they began their transit through the portal. Emerging on the other side, Shutra couldn't help but exclaim in confusion, his eyes wide at the unexpected sight. His gaze swept over a vast encampment spread out before them, a scene that was entirely unforeseen. Chris, ever the strategist, confirmed their location. "Good. Just as I expected, there's their encampment." He immediately began assessing the situation, noting the troop numbers and formulating a plan. "Judging by its size, I'd say there are roughly 5,000 troops. If we're striking from the rear, then the supplies should be our priority." Chris laid out his strategy, suggesting a pincer movement to exploit their advantage. If General Baldal launches an attack from the front to distract them, then our infiltrating units can burn down their food stores from behind. Despite the unfolding strategic assessment, a nagging feeling of unease began to surface. One of their companions pointed out a stark discrepancy, their voice tinged with concern. But doesn't something seem strange? There aren't nearly enough troops in the camp." Chris echoed the concern, his brow furrowed as he considered the implications. "You're right. Where did they all go? Could they have already started an attack?" Suddenly, a sharp sound pierced the air, drawing everyone's attention. Shutra exclaimed, "What's that?" The distant clash of steel and shouts indicated a battle was already in progress. "Sounds like a battle going on." Chris quickly instructed Shutra on a vital technique. "Shutra, focus your aura on your eyes." Shutra, already ready, questioned, "My aura?" Shutra concentrated, his aura flaring as he followed Chris's command, preparing to use his enhanced vision. With his newly enhanced sight, Shutra gasped, finally able to see the skirmish unfolding before them. I can see it." He began to identify the combatants, noting the familiar markings of the Lightning Tribe, but also unfamiliar faces. One side looks like the Lightning Tribe, but who are the others? They're not General Bandal's men. Today wasn't scheduled for any battles anyway. Shutra observed the limited scope of the engagement, his brow furrowed in confusion. Plus, the scale of the fight is too small. The clash intensified, a flurry of movement and sound as the battle raged. A brief, startled reaction came from one of the companions as the situation took an unexpected turn. The sudden appearance of dark elves caused a wave of shock. "Dark elves? What? Did you just say dark elves?" Chris confirmed their identity, noting their distinctive smaller build and the unusual sight of them riding Dracos. "Yes. They have a smaller build, and the fact that they're riding Dracos is Chitra's gaze swept over the scene of chaos, observing the swift retreat of the enemy forces. He couldn't help but wonder if their commander had fallen, leading to such an immediate collapse. He questioned the speed at which the engagement had ended, the presence of dark elves in this unexpected skirmish only deepening his confusion. The sheer suddenness of it all left Chitra with a furrowed brow, the rapid turn of events clearly weighing heavily on his mind. General Baldal appeared on a projection, his voice confirming that he had heard about the discovery of the dwarven portal. Prince Chris, ever the astute strategist, acknowledged the success of his army but immediately pressed Baldal on how they had known about the portal's existence. Baldal, with a touch of humility, clarified that he hadn't been the one to discover it, directing the credit to Prince Shutra. Shutra, present with Chris, downplayed his role, attributing the discovery to sheer luck and introducing himself as the ninth prince. General Baldal warmly greeted Shutra, remarking that seeing him again was pleasant and promising proper rewards at the Demon King's castle. Baldal then shifted to the day's events, asking if Shutra or Chris knew anything about a skirmish that had occurred near the Lightning Tribe's camp. Chris deduced that the skirmish was likely the work of the Dark Elves, who seemed to have joined the fray on their own accord, though he still questioned their motives. Baldal confirmed the Dark Elves' involvement but mused about why they would clash with the Lightning Tribe. Chris wondered if they were reinforcements from the Demon King's castle, but Baldal indicated it was unclear, stating that the Dark Elves claimed they were only scouting. Baldal then revealed a more pressing concern: the leader of the Dark Elf independent unit had been captured by the Scarlet Lightning Tribe. Chris reacted with surprise, realizing the capture was the cause of the reckless skirmish and quickly questioning the identity of the captured commander. Shutra looked intently, a dawning realization spreading across his face as he was told the commander was someone he knew well. Baldal confirmed the commander was indeed the sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade. The implication hit home with chilling certainty: Felicia Doomblade was Shutra's sister. Chris and his companions exchanged looks of shock and concern, the gravity of Shutra's sister being captured now horribly clear. This is the sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade. She's the daughter of Sylvia Doomblade, the third queen and princess of the Dark Elves, and the twin sister of the fifth prince, Sylvan Doomblade. In the game, both Felicia and Sylvan were aligned with the faction of the fourth princess, Anastasia Nekrian. Chris questioned Felicia's presence, wondering if her appearance here was self-serving and if the Scarlet Lightning Tribe even recognized her as Felicia. Chris mused that he'd always seen her as an enemy and questioned her motives for appearing in this location. He wondered if the Scarlet Lightning Tribe recognized her, or if they were aware that the dark elf they saw was actually Felicia. Someone responded that they didn't know, as they hadn't been able to confirm that detail yet, leaving a heavy sense of uncertainty. With their understanding clouded by this uncertainty, they began to discuss their next steps. The decision was made: they would rescue Felicia if possible, but without any prior negotiations or concessions. Chris stated that if the enemy made the first move, they could at least attempt to talk. However, he made it clear he had no intention of initiating any dialogue himself. Chris agreed to gather more information from his side and to make contact if anything urgent arose, a plan met with understanding. Meanwhile, Sylvan, upon learning his sister Felicia had become a prisoner, was determined to rescue her, provided she was still alive. He insisted that they absolutely had to save her, emphasizing their familial bond. Despite Sylvan's passionate plea, Caitlin acknowledged the harsh reality, stating that a rescue attempt might not be easy and could lead to significant losses. Caitlin expressed her concern directly, noting the difficulty and the risk of suffering losses themselves if they attempted a rescue. Sylvan, however, remained resolute, declaring they would save her and that they had to, because she was their sister, passionately arguing for her rescue and reiterating their bond. Chris, though acknowledging Sylvan's sentiment, couldn't shake his reservations, reminding them of the inherent risks involved. He gave a stark warning, indicating that they couldn't afford to lose more lives just for Felicia. A tactical plan was then laid out, a strategy designed to minimize risk while maximizing impact. General Bandal would be responsible for luring out the main force of the Scarlet Lightning Tribe. While the main force was occupied, the allied squads would strike the enemy encampment from behind, a coordinated pincer movement. Following the diversion, Chris declared he would charge into the center of their base to create maximum chaos, a bold move to sow disarray. He assigned Caitlin and Shutra the crucial mission of leading their own squads. When asked if the mission involved rescuing their sister, Chris confirmed it, adding that they would first target the food storage and armory before proceeding to rescue Felicia, a strategic approach prioritizing disruption. However, he stressed that if the situation became too dangerous, they were to retreat immediately, reiterating that they couldn't afford to lose more lives solely for Felicia. Sylvan protested, calling Chris brother, and urging him to be quiet, but Chris asserted his authority as commander, stating he was in charge of a unit, leaving others to notice his apparent lack of enthusiasm for the rescue and speculate about a potential past conflict between him and Felicia. Sylvan passionately defended Felicia, questioning how anyone could dismiss her as mere family and arguing that her recklessness shouldn't endanger their entire operation. Someone observed Chris, noting his apparent lack of enthusiasm for Felicia's rescue, which struck them as odd. A lingering question formed, could there be a history between Chris and Felicia that explained his reservation? The scene shifts to a desolate, mountainous landscape under a fiery sky, hinting at a harsh and dangerous environment. A hand emerged, gripping a weapon, ready for action, signaling the imminent start of combat. The cry rang out, "Forward, warriors!" A surge of aggressive roars and growls echoed as the warriors charged, their ferocity palpable. Fueled by fury, they declared their intent to annihilate the Scarlet Lightning bastards, their hatred a burning force. The vantage point shifts to above the enemy encampment, revealing its layout and the sheer number of tents and fortifications. A closer look at the encampment showed rows of tents and fortifications, a sprawling military base. A lone figure, overlooking the enemy base, seemed to be strategizing, their intense gaze fixed on the target. Shutra's forces, seeing the initial engagement, began to question the delay and the lack of immediate action. Shutra calmly instructed them to wait for the signal, his steady demeanor a contrast to the rising impatience around him. A powerful explosion erupted in the distance, a fiery bloom in the sky, signaling the start of the main assault. The initial explosion tore through the enemy ranks, throwing warriors into the air and igniting widespread chaos. Chaos erupted within the enemy stronghold, the carefully laid defenses crumbling under the unexpected onslaught. A hulking warrior, axe in hand, led a charge against the bewildered enemy soldiers, a force of pure destruction. The enraged warrior roared, "Kill them all!" A tactical map displayed Shutra's forces and their objectives, highlighting the coordinated nature of their assault. Shutra, seeing the enemy's confusion, declared that the attack had begun and questioned why they were not yet moving, a hint of frustration in his voice. He was reminded to wait for the signal, a moment of tense anticipation as they held their position. The battle raged on, depicted through a flurry of blows and shouts as warriors clashed fiercely. The clash of weapons and the cries of battle filled the air, a symphony of destruction. The retreat was ordered, marked by a cacophony of shouts and the sight of fire engulfing the enemy encampment. As flames spread, a figure turned, witnessing the unfolding destruction, their expression unreadable. A warrior lets out a triumphant laugh, his fist clenched. A horde of enemies erupts in a guttural roar, their faces contorted with fury. The air crackles with violence as fierce beasts and warriors clash in a whirlwind of combat. Caitlin, with a worried expression, calls out a warning to Shutra. Shutra acknowledges the warning with a brief response, turning his attention to a map projected on a holographic display. Under the cover of chaos, one of Shutra's companions urges them to move swiftly towards the food storage. A subordinate roars, rallying his troops with a bloodthirsty command to eliminate the enemy. The sounds of battle intensify, a cacophony of roars and clashing steel. A searing blast of energy erupts, engulfing the battlefield. A monstrous creature unleashes a deafening roar as it charges into the fray. Flames rage and debris flies as the enemy encampment is consumed by destruction. A decisive strike slices through the chaos of battle. Shutra's newly acquired skill, dagger-throwing LV1, is revealed, allowing him to strike targets from afar. Shutra grins, a hint of mischief in his eyes. When asked about his newfound dagger-throwing ability, Shutra casually explains that he gained the skill after trying to toss a dagger the previous night, downplaying its significance as he urges them to continue. Karak points towards the food storage, questioning if they should proceed with burning it. Shutra confirms the plan, indicating they should continue as intended. Shutra expresses concern, realizing that Felicia might be trapped inside the food storage and could perish in the ensuing fire. Shutra adamantly states they must find Felicia first, prompting Karak to question how they will accomplish this. Shutra reassures him to hold on. A moment of intense focus as Shutra contemplates his next move. Shutra explains that Felicia, being a neutral NPC, should appear marked as blue or purple on the map, which will aid in their search. Shutra calls out to Karak, directing him down a specific path. Karak confirms he understands and is following Shutra's lead. They arrive at what appears to be the correct location, but Shutra wonders where Felicia could be. A disembodied voice calls out Shutra's name as he looks around, his expression one of searching. Amidst the raging inferno of the enemy encampment, Shutra discovers his sister, Princess Felicia Doomblade, bound within a strange ritual circle. Her eyes wide with dawning horror, Felicia is held captive, illuminated by the eerie glow of glowing chains binding her within the circle. As Shutra approaches, Felicia recognizes him, her voice trembling as she asks what he's doing there, the sixth Princess Felicia Doomblade revealed in her dire situation. The battle for the enemy base rages on, the mission to disrupt their operations in full swing, as the fate of Felicia hangs in the balance. Amidst the chaos, Felicia spotted Shutra and, with a mix of surprise and concern, asked what he was doing there, suggesting they talk in a safer place. She immediately pointed out the extreme danger, insisting they had to untie him quickly so they could escape the inferno. Felicia mused that if she could manage to get Shutra indebted to her, it might prove quite useful down the line, a flicker of strategic calculation in her eyes. She then urgently declared they had barely escaped and insisted they hurry to regroup with Chris and Caitlin. Shutra, taken aback, questioned if Chris and Caitlin had actually come all this way just to rescue him. Chris responded with a hearty, of course, and a touch of incredulity, asking why Shutra would even question such a thing. Felicia stammered, asking if they weren't supposed to come rescue him, but quickly backtracked, her face flushing as she clarified she didn't mean it like that. Felicia explained to Shutra that he'd been too removed from their struggles to truly understand, just as an orc warrior yelled a warning about an incoming enemy surge. Shutra quickly called out to Felicia, telling her to come over to his side immediately as the battle around them intensified. Felicia agreed to come, but paused, a look of confusion crossing her face as she asked when Shutra had started calling her by her name. Suddenly, a searing energy flared, and Shutra reacted with a startled huh? Felicia shouted a warning to Shutra, telling him to look behind him, her eyes wide with alarm. Shutra turned, a bewildered expression on his face, not understanding what was happening. A blinding light erupted as an unseen force struck Shutra directly in the chest with immense power. Shutra let out a pained gasp, recoiling sharply from the devastating impact, the energy searing through him. Despite the searing pain, Shutra's eyes widened with shock and a dawning realization as a new, powerful energy surged within him. Felicia cried out Shutra's name, her voice filled with concern as she watched his body begin to glow with an unfamiliar, radiant energy. Felicia watched, her eyes wide with concern and a touch of disbelief, as Shutra's form was engulfed by this strange, glowing power. A nearby orc roared in fury, its massive form turning towards Felicia, enraged by the display of power. Felicia, annoyed by the orc's interruption and Shutra's apparent vulnerability, muttered a dismissive tch. With a sudden flash, Shutra unleashed a burst of raw magical energy, a controlled release of the power now within him. Felicia witnessed the spectacular display, her eyes widening in disbelief at the sheer force of the magic Shutra now wielded. Shutra's gaze hardened as he fully grasped the incredible power he now possessed, a sense of awe and determination washing over him. Felicia, noticing the flames erupting from the orc's hand as it prepared another attack, exclaimed in surprise at the escalating danger. A swirl of energy gathered around Shutra's feet as he stabilized himself, a newfound control evident in his stance. He had acquired Mana Control LV.1. As Shudera grappled with the surge of power within him, a notification flashed, informing him he had acquired Fire Arrow LV.1. He unleashed the newfound energy, a blinding torrent of magic erupting outwards, pushing back the encroaching orc warriors. Shudera grinned, the raw power coursing through him igniting a sense of pure exhilaration. He instinctively conjured a pair of fire arrows, the arcane energy crackling around his hands, aimed at the bewildered orcs. The orc warriors recoiled, overwhelmed by the sudden display of potent magic, some already succumbing to the fiery blasts. Shutara's laughter echoed, a wild, uninhibited sound as he reveled in his newfound abilities. He exclaimed that this was real magic, incredibly potent even at its first level. His joy was short-lived as a searing cold blast erupted from the shadows, forcing Shudera to react defensively. An unexpected wave of ice shattered the ground around him, a stark contrast to the heat of his own magic. Felicia cried out, her eyes widening in alarm as she recognized the direction of the attack. Shudera looked up, his gaze shifting from his own hands to the source of the ice magic. He realized with a jolt that the icy projectile was aimed directly at Felicia. With a shout, Felicia urged Shudera to stay back, concerned for his safety even as the attack bore down on them. Shudera instinctively moved to intercept the attack, shielding Felicia with his own body. He felt another searing impact, the force of it staggering him, the cold biting deep. Felicia looked on, her expression shifting from concern to a flicker of annoyance as Shudera took the hit meant for her. She seemed to believe Shudera was acting foolishly, getting in the way when he was clearly outmatched. With a fierce determination, Felicia unleashed her own counterattack, conjuring icy shards at their attacker. As she fought, a notification informed her that she too had acquired a new skill, Ice Arrow LV.1. Felicia smirked, her arrogance evident as she declared that this fight was hers to finish. She retaliated with a powerful barrage of ice magic, striking down her opponents with chilling precision. Shudera found himself stunned by Felicia's aggressive stance, her actions seemingly dismissing his own capabilities as he watched her decimate the enemy mages. Suddenly, Felicia used her magic to instantly heal Shudera, who stared in disbelief at his rapidly recovering health. A notification informed him that Felicia had acquired Heal LV.1, a testament to her potent magical abilities, and he heard her taunting him, asking if he was feeling better. But their moment of respite was shattered by the sudden appearance of a hulking blood ogre, blocking their only escape route with its monstrous form, leaving them trapped. Shudera could only stare, his mind reeling, stammering out Felicia's name as recognition dawned amidst the chaos. Felicia's expression shifted from concern to utter disbelief. "Who asked you to save me?" she snapped, her eyes wide with a mixture of anger and confusion. She then turned her sharp gaze back to Shudera, her words laced with a biting arrogance that shook him. She declared that even among their siblings, he was the weakest, questioning who he thought needed saving. Shutara's mind raced, trying to comprehend her reaction. He thought to himself that Felicia seemed to be misunderstanding something, utterly bewildered by her attitude. He then voiced his confusion, asking when she had learned magic. Someone else chimed in, referencing her recent display of power by noting that she had even taken down the mage. Shudera finally pieced it together, a wave of confusion washing over him. He realized she must have misunderstood, thinking he was trying to save her. A dark, monstrous creature loomed, having been defeated. Shutara's realization continued, a dark and overwhelming understanding of the situation. Felicia unleashed a blast of ice magic with unnerving confidence. The sheer force of her magic sent a shockwave through the area. Shudera could only watch, stunned by the raw power displayed. A soft, green light began to emanate from Shutara's wounds. Suddenly, a notification flashed before Shutara's eyes, "You have acquired, heal LV.1. Felicia proudly proclaimed that the wound healed instantly, as expected of the genius mage, Felicia Doomblade. Felicia's smug tone continued as she inquired if Shudera was feeling better and could stand. Shudera, still disoriented, replied that he was fine, thanking her and mentioning his blood had been replenished. Felicia's eyes narrowed slightly at his words, and he stammered a denial. A guttural roar echoed through the battlefield, shaking the very ground. Shudera looked up, dread creeping into his voice, as a monstrous figure began to emerge from the dust and debris. A terrifying creature, a monstrous blood ogre, materialized before them, its red eyes burning with malevolence. Shudera exclaimed in fear, asking what that was. Felicia's eyes widened as she recognized the beast, explaining it was a blood ogre, one of the mutated species. Shutara's face fell as he asked if that meant they had to get through it to escape. Felicia nodded grimly, confirming that escape would indeed require confronting the creature. The blood ogre let out another earth-shattering roar, its massive form silhouetted against the fiery sky. Shudera looked at the colossal blood ogre, then back at Felicia, his voice tinged with desperation as he asked how they were supposed to fight such a thing. The blood ogre unleashed a devastating blow, the sheer force of it echoing across the battlefield. Shutra could only stare in disbelief at the monster's impossible speed, his mind struggling to comprehend it. Felicia, ever the pragmatist, called out to Shutra, urging him to distract the beast while she prepared a potent magical strike. Shutra stammered, bewildered, asking how he was expected to accomplish such a task. Despite his confusion, Shutra agreed, his voice filled with a newfound determination to draw the monster's attention, hoping Felicia's magic would be enough. He desperately called out for his ally, Karak, and thankfully, his friend appeared, ready to face the challenge. Karak, his eyes gleaming with courage, declared they'd tackle this like they always did, ready for the fight. The true battle commenced. Karak mused, wondering if now was the time he could finally unleash the full power of his dwarven dagger. The air crackled with anticipation as the fight began to escalate. The sounds of the brutal clash of combat began to fill the air. Karak charged forward, empowered by his unwavering resolve, ready to meet the monster head-on. The clang of steel against scale rang out as their weapons met. The sounds of their intense combat grew louder, a symphony of violence. A fierce, guttural roar erupted from the monster, shaking the very foundations of the battlefield. The sheer impact of their struggle sent tremors through the ground. The ogre let out another enraged roar, its fury palpable. The battle raged on, a dizzying whirlwind of motion and deafening sound. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Karak gritted his teeth, enduring a powerful blow that sent shockwaves through him. The blood ogre's raw, unbridled power was immense, pushing Karak to his limits. The tide of battle began to turn, the advantage shifting precariously. Overwhelmed, Karak struggled to hold his ground. Just as despair threatened to set in, Shutra unleashed his prepared magical attack, a blinding flash of light. Their combined efforts, a desperate surge of power, finally brought the monstrous blood ogre down. The monstrous blood ogre lets out a deafening roar as Shutra and Karak brace themselves, the air thick with its raw power. Its immense strength is overwhelming, its fury palpable as it moves with shocking speed, shaking the very ground. Dust and debris erupt as the ogre's attack lands with a thunderous impact, the chaos of battle in full swing. The ground trembles violently under the ogre's colossal frame. A brief moment of stillness amidst the chaos, as Shutra sees his opportunity. Shutra declares to their monstrous foe that this is its end. The ogre's ferocious expression is contorted in rage. A final, desperate surge of power is unleashed, a combined effort from Shutra and Karak. With a sickening crunch, the blood ogre is struck down, its massive form collapsing. The ogre lets out a final, agonizing cry as it is completely overwhelmed. Silence descends upon the battlefield, the immediate threat vanquished. Shutra exhales, the adrenaline slowly subsiding, the remnants of the ogre scattered as proof of their hard-won victory. Shutra acknowledges their victory but remains pragmatic, aware that other enemies still lurk. A notification flashes before Shutra's eyes, signaling an important change. He realizes with a grin that their most troublesome enemy has been dealt with. His gaze shifts, noticing a subtle change around him. A faint glow emanates from him as a system notification appears. His level has increased, marking a significant milestone. Finally, he has reached level 10. Another notification reveals that the level of his protagonist setting adjustment has also increased. Shutra realizes this advancement has granted him a new passive skill. He muses on the potential rewards his recent progress might unlock, ready to embrace whatever comes next. The chapter title appears, signaling the beginning of a new phase in his journey. A new skill is revealed, Battlefield Protection LV1. He begins to understand the skill's effect. Any projectile weapons aimed at him would have their accuracy decreased. He recognizes this phenomenon. Shutra immediately recognizes the familiar stormtrooper effect from countless stories, where bullets miraculously miss the protagonist. He recalls those scenes where bullets rain down in volleys, yet somehow, every single one just barely misses the protagonist. The ground began to shake with the furious roars of charging orcs, their sheer numbers overwhelming. Felicia's voice cut through the rising panic, calling out to Shutra with urgency as the orcs closed in. He simply agreed, ready for what was to come. A strange energy began to gather around Felicia, her expression hardening with determination as she prepared to act. Her eyes blazing, Felicia unleashed a commanding shout, calling upon the very winds to answer her plea. The orcs, caught in the sudden tempest, cried out in agony as they were tossed about by an unseen force, their charge broken. Shutra watched, a sense of recognition dawning as the swirling winds disrupted the enemy advance. He realized this power was unlike any magic he knew, it felt ancient, primal. The realization solidified, Felicia was not merely casting a spell, she was commanding spirits, a truth echoed by the awe of those around him. Despite her condition, the raw, untamed power of a dark elf was undeniable, an intrinsic strength that burned brightly. It was clear now that Felicia was not just a gifted mage, but a born spirit summoner, a power that had been suppressed by her past trauma. The air thrummed with an incredible potential as Felicia tapped into her spirit summoning abilities, a force that transcended conventional magic. Witnessing Felicia's devastating wind attack, Shutra couldn't help but wonder if his newfound battlefield protection skill would grant him the same uncanny ability to evade danger. With the immediate threat neutralized by Felicia's power and Shutra's own growing skills, the battle was won, but the path ahead promised only more challenges. A blinding light flares, a signal that cannot be ignored. The light intensifies, accompanied by the ominous presence of charging orcs, their monstrous forms revealed. Amidst the sudden chaos, an odd command is heard, "Take off your clothes." This is followed by the explanation that a yellow flare signifies an order to retreat, causing confusion. The prince, taken aback, wonders what is happening outside, a sentiment echoed by Karak's unease. Karak voices his concern, asking if someone might be in danger and urging the prince to give an order. The prince, ever decisive, orders Karak to take the troops and fall back, revealing his urgent intention to go to Caitlin. Karak reacts with immediate confusion to the prince's surprising declaration. The prince clarifies his decision regarding the retreat, while Shutra announces his intention to accompany him, stating he cannot stand owing people and has unfinished business. Shutra declares he will go with the prince, not wanting to be indebted and also needing to deal with some pigs. Shutra addresses the princess, explaining his desire to repay a debt and his need to deal with some pigs. Shutra elaborates, stating he wants to repay his debt and has business to attend to with certain pigs. The prince, after a moment of contemplation, tells Shutra to be careful, as they will be waiting above. Shutra acknowledges the prince's words, agreeing to meet up later. Karak expresses his suspicion about the prince's need to go to Caitlin, noting the odd retreat order and wondering if she's in trouble, perhaps captured by orcs. Karak speculates if Caitlin might have been captured by orcs, which the prince confirms is a possibility he hopes to avoid, admitting his concern. The prince admits his concern for Caitlin, acknowledging she is his sister and that it's only natural to worry. Felicia presses the prince about his worry for Caitlin, to which he defensively states it's natural for a sibling. He further elaborates, admitting that their alliance also plays a significant role in his concern. Felicia ponders the prince's words, finding his reasoning natural but perhaps with underlying motives. A tense atmosphere hangs in the air as Felicia muses on the prince's explanation. The battle intensifies around them with roars and the sounds of fighting. A chaotic battle erupts with the roars of monsters and the sounds of fighting. Amidst the fray, it appears Shutra is engaged in combat, fighting back against the monstrous onslaught. Felicia appears, seemingly unfazed by the chaotic situation, questioning Shutra's presence and why he didn't retreat. Shutra awkwardly explains his intention was to help, despite the unexpected circumstances of the retreat. A monstrous roar erupts as the battle continues to rage. Shutra unleashes his newfound fire magic, a blinding, fiery strike that carves through the charging orcs with decisive precision. He readies another blast of energy, the power crackling around him, a testament to his unwavering determination. A powerful wave of energy surges from Shutra, overwhelming the remaining orcs even as the chaotic battle rages around him. A monstrous roar echoes through the battlefield, signaling the overwhelming presence of the enemy forces. Amidst the fading chaos, a figure emerges, observing the scene with a sharp, calculating gaze. Felicia, her composure regained, remarks with a hint of disdain that there was nothing to worry about. She questions Shitra's presence, asking why he didn't retreat with the others. Shutra, caught off guard, explains awkwardly that he came to help, though his efforts seem to have been unnecessary. Shutra looks confused by Felicia's words, not quite grasping her line of questioning. The sound of hurried footsteps echoes as the prince arrives, his eyes scanning the area for his sister. The urgency of his mission is evident. The prince spots Felicia and rushes towards her, relief washing over his face as he sees she is unharmed. He embraces her tightly, expressing his immense relief that Felicia is safe. Felicia, though touched by his concern, brushes it off, assuring him that she is perfectly fine and that he worries too much. An observer notes the evident closeness between the prince and Felicia, a connection that seems to transcend the chaos of the battlefield. A sudden alert blares, signaling a tactical shift. Enemy forces are regrouping and heading back towards their position. Acknowledging the renewed threat, the prince orders a swift retreat, tasking Shutra with leading the way while they cover the rear. Shutra readily agrees to the plan, his gaze sharp and focused on the path ahead. A moment of quiet as the group prepares to move, the tension of the approaching enemy palpable. They move quickly through the deserted structures, the sounds of battle fading behind them as they make their escape. During the retreat, someone mentioned Shutra's pivotal role in finding the portal, highlighting how much he's changed and contributed to their success. Surprise registers on a face as the extent of Shutra's growth and capabilities is acknowledged, a stark contrast to his past. The group emerges from the shadows into a more secure area, the immediate danger having passed. Chris greets the prince warmly, relief evident in his voice as he confirms everyone has returned safely. The prince confirms Felicia's safe return to Chris, a subtle weight lifting from his shoulders. Felicia looks on as the prince and Chris exchange a brief, almost strained, greeting. A quiet understanding passes between them. Felicia and Chris share a moment, their reunion marked by a quiet acknowledgement of their shared history and the trials they've endured. The prince, surveying the aftermath, confirmed that the chaos had indeed subsided. He then called out to Felicia, a wave of relief washing over him as he found her safe. Felicia, ever the observer, noted with a measured tone that General Bandal's forces had emerged victorious. She added that Yakuzan, the enemy leader, seemed to have abandoned the fight after his camp was incinerated. One of the others questioned this, reminding Felicia that Yakuzan was the chief of the Scarlet Lightning tribe, as if she'd forgotten. The prince clarified that Yakuzan hadn't exactly surrendered, but rather fled. He voiced concern that Yakuzan might rally his scattered allies. He pointed out that if Yakuzan joined forces with Kairam's army, it would become a significant problem indeed. With that tactical concern addressed, the prince turned his attention back to Felicia, inquiring about her presence in such a dangerous area. Felicia offered a seemingly simple explanation, she had been researching nearby ruins. She continued, saying that on her way to offer aid after hearing about the battle, she was captured by Azuraskans. The prince looked at her, his expression one of doubt, and directly asked if that was the truth. Felicia, sensing his suspicion, defensively asked if he believed she was lying. Seeing her defensiveness, and likely recalling the ordeal she'd just been through, the prince decided to drop the matter. He told her she'd clearly had a rough time and suggested they leave it there for the day. Chris, taking charge, ordered everyone to rest and commended them for their hard work, specifically acknowledging the prince. He then seemed to review his learned skills, a contemplative look on his face. The display showed his own skills, mana control, fire arrow, ice arrow, and heal, all at level 1. Chris mused that while just looking at them felt good, only his aura skill was truly useful in real combat right now. Later, Felicia approached Shutra's room, asking if she could come in for a moment. Shutra, surprised to see her so late, asked what brought her there, noting that she'd changed clothes. Felicia stood there, her feet visible as she waited. Shutra looked at her, clearly a bit flustered by her presence. Felicia then made a surprising and bold request, startling Shutra. She looked directly at him, a knowing expression on her face, and told him to take off his clothes.